Welcome to the channel. Join us on this journey of self-discovery and transformation as we unlock the secrets of the universe and empower you to manifest abundance, love, success, and fulfillment in every aspect of your life.
It was Thomas Troward. I don't know much about him, but he did some lectures on mental science way back in 1907 or 1908. He was from Scotland. One of the things he said is that the law of flotation wasn't discovered by contemplating sinking things. You know, before the 15th and 16th centuries, all ships were made of wood. Not because iron and steel weren't available, but because there was a belief that wood floated. So therefore, you had to make ships out of things that floated. That's literally how it went. Then someone came along and said that it has absolutely nothing to do with what things are made out of. It has to do with the amount of water that is being displaced. That's what determines whether something will float or not. I think about that all the time because it's about the contemplation of what you desire, that you create what it is that you want to have for yourself. It's in your willingness to contemplate it and nothing more, according to Troward and mental science. So I think about the Wright brothers, 100 or so years ago. It's like the law of flying wasn't discovered by contemplating things staying on the ground. For me to figure out how to get an airplane to fly, with my limited knowledge, I would probably have contemplated things staying on the ground, like this is what happens. But someone came along and contemplated the idea that if you get enough speed going and you have the right design and you get pressure underneath something, this thing's going to lift off. Somebody had to contemplate that idea. And everybody who contemplated that it wasn't possible, that it couldn't work, was a part of why flying didn't take place earlier. Because there was no new law discovered in the early 20th century, any more than electricity was discovered by Thomas Edison or anyone like that. The ability to have electricity has always been there. Somebody has to contemplate it. So it's like in your own personal life, your willingness to contemplate yourself as a person who is capable of attracting what you want into your life, having the kind of relationships that you want, being able to have abundance where scarcity always exists. All you have to do is begin the process by being willing to contemplate the presence of that in your life. And I've always been a person that I can remember throughout my life as someone who could contemplate myself being able to do things that most people couldn't. I can give you a good example. When I was young, my mother got us all back together. We were living in Detroit on the east side. We got a new television set. It was a black and white one with a screen about this big. It was an Admiral, and we had it in our home. It was like, oh my God, black and white television. You remember Uncle Milty and all and so on. There was a guy on TV. His name was Steve Allen, and he was on The Tonight Show. I was 11, 12, 13 years old. I was born in 1940, so I was 11 or 12. I used to stay up every night and watch The Tonight Show, even though I went to school the next day. It was just something about that show, all of the characters and Box Mock and all the things that Steve Allen would do on it. I would come down when I would be talking the next day, and I would be telling my mother and my two brothers that when I do The Tonight Show, this is what I would say. I wouldn't have said to what Lewis said, and I say the way it reacted, how he reacted, that I would have said this and I used to do this. My brothers and my mother would say, that's just Wayne, he's just nutty, he thinks he's on The Tonight Show, he thinks he's going to do The Tonight Show. And I would go up into my room on this little tiny house that we lived in, a little 2-bedroom house that 5 of us lived in because my mother remarried. And I would see myself doing The Tonight Show. I would just practice it, and Steve Allen became someone that I was really an amateur. Well, fast forward, 30 years or whatever. So, and I've written a book, Your Erroneous Zones, and The Tonight Show calls, and they asked me if I would like to come on. So I do my first stint on The Tonight Show. I did the show like 37 times over a period of 3 or 4 years with all these different hosts. But Johnny Carson was on. And the first guest on the very first show when I did the show was Steve Allen. And it was like something clicked in me that I had contemplated that as a child. I had always had a knowing, and I can remember sitting there talking to Johnny about this thing that, and Steve Allen was sitting there right next to me. And we were talking about that kind of so that by putting my attention on something, it wasn't some deliberate thing that I was doing, when I was 11 or 12 years old, that was designating that I was going to be a person who was going to be appearing on talk shows 30 years from now. It was just an awareness, a willingness to contemplate myself in that kind of a place. And I think the power of contemplation is the thing that most people haven't harnessed yet. And when we do, when you harness it in your life, there's absolutely no limit to what you can attract into your life. If you absolutely stay focused on what it is that you know you're going to manifest and attract, you're not going to do it in your time. You know, Jackson Browne sings a song, it says, "And creation reveals its secrets by and by." I mean, you can't push the river. You can't. It's all done in divine time. But it will show. It will show. It will manifest. It will attract itself. And I'm never surprised any longer about anything that I put my thoughts on, that I can attract it into my life. I just absolutely know that law of attraction and that it absolutely works.